Thank you very much, Dr. Sophia. What a rich set of examples, each reminding us that when implemented intentionally, AI can deepen rather than dilute learning. But now we come to a part of the conversation that's generating both concern and confusion in higher education. Assessment. We all know assessment is the engine of formal education. It drives learning behavior, signals achievement, and validates qualifications. But what happens when a student can produce a grammatically correct, well-organized essay using ChatGPT in under 60 seconds? What does that mean for essays as a form of assessment? For take-home assignments? For online exams? I want to suggest that this is not a crisis. It's an opportunity. In fact, AI might just be the push we needed to finally rethink how and why we assess in the first place. Let's start by examining the core tension. Traditional assessments tend to focus on product, the finished report, the polished essay, the final presentation. But generative AI tools can now mimic or even outperform average human outputs for many of these tasks. So what do? We shift the spotlight from product to process, from answers to thinking, from isolated performance to ongoing engagement. One model gaining traction is process-based assessment. For example, in a third-year economics course at a university in Europe, it was recently piloted an assignment where students were asked to use an AI tool to generate an initial policy brief on housing inequality. But that was just the beginning. They then annotated the draft, critically evaluating what the AI got right, what was biased, and where important arguments were missing. Then in a second phase, they rewrote the brief themselves. Their mark was based on the evolution of their work, not just the final product. Students reported feeling more confident, more involved, and, most interestingly, more ownership over their final submission. The AI had helped them see what not to do. Some higher education institutions experiment also multimodal assessment. This goes beyond written assignments and allows students to express their learning through oral presentations, reflective journals, learning portfolios, or creative projects. One media studies class had students generate podcast scripts with the help of AI and then critique the AI's sense of tone, perspective, and fact-checking. They followed this up by recording their own commentary on how they revised the content. It was metacognition in action. Another trend we're seeing is real-time interactive assessment, especially in courses where critical thinking or ethical reasoning is central. For instance, in a law course on intellectual property, instead of a standard written exam, students participated in a simulated debate where they had to respond in real time to AI-generated legal cases. These scenarios evolve dynamically based on the student's argument, forcing them to apply concepts rather than just repeat them. And yes, let's talk about academic integrity because this is where much of the anxiety around AI lies. There's been an understandable temptation to fall back on AI detection tools, to scan student work for signs of machine authorship. But here's the problem: they're not reliable. Some recent studies have found high rates of false positives, especially for students who write in non-native English or who use grammatically simple language. We risk penalizing the very students we aim to support. So instead of catching AI use, we should focus on cultivating responsible AI engagement. Here's one approach we're using. Students are allowed to use AI tools, but they must submit a use disclosure form along with their assignment. They explain which tools they used, what they asked, what outputs they received, and how they edited them. They're not graded down for using AI, they're graded up for reflecting on how they used it. This makes space for transparency and learning rather than punishment and fear. We also need to rethink our rubrics. What are we really measuring? Is it memorization? Grammar? Structure? Or is it creativity, reasoning, and ethical judgment? Rubrics should reward student autonomy, iterative thinking, and synthesis. AI can generate content, but it can't reflect on values, connect ideas meaningfully, or share a personal journey. Those are uniquely human skills, and they're exactly what we should be assessing. Finally, we need to bring students into this conversation. Ask them how they use AI. Let them co-design assessment formats. You might be surprised. They often have clearer ideas about what's authentic and fair than we do. And when students feel trusted and involved, they are far more likely to engage honestly and thoughtfully. In conclusion, let me offer this. AI is not the end of assessment, but it may be the end of lazy assessment, assignments that rely on rote tasks, predictable outputs, or formulaic structures. What we need now are assessments that invite thinking, reflection, argument, creativity, and voice. So let's stop asking, how do we stop students from using AI? And start asking, how do we design assessments that make meaningful learning visible, with or without AI? That's the real opportunity in front of us. Thank you for listening to me. Now we are going to listen to Dr. Okan from BSBI Hamburg about faculty and institutional readiness.